You are listening to the Investigate Further podcast. Investigate further, searching for the truth.
All right, welcome everyone to the first episode of the Investigate Further podcast. I'm your host, Eric Daugherty, and today I am joined by my friend Austin Cabrera. How are you doing, Austin?
I'm doing fine, sir. How are you?
Awesome, I'm doing amazing tonight. So, this is the first episode. This podcast basically going to be delving into modern political events, dissecting current news articles will be available in the description of our YouTube channel and soon to come on many other major podcasting platforms. All right, so let's just jump right into it. We have first from the Daily Mail. Donald Trump orders immediate surge of hundreds of feds into Chicago, calling it a violence-scarred disaster. Very true. Then threatens to order them into other Democrat-controlled cities, including Detroit and Philadelphia, over mayor's objections. So, are you looking at this right now? Yeah.
I have it up.
So first of all, I think it's interesting how it's already pointed out that these are Democratic-controlled cities, so just blatantly showing where all the problems are. Not only that, but those Democratic-controlled cities are the ones with the mayors who are actually trying to prevent Trump from helping them. So you have you have Trump trying to send in federal law enforcement officials. This is very lawful. This is legal, and this is happening because we have several 100% violent crime increase. I know for a fact in New York City it's 400%.
I think in Chicago it was up 200%.
Yeah, all of them are like, I know some of them are in the like 80s, and then you have some in the hundreds, which is insane. You know, that's what BLM will bring to your city. So yeah, let's keep going. Trump said more federal agents are being sent to tackle violence and expansion of Operation LeGend. So actually interesting, Operation LeGend. I looked up where this came from. I think it might be further down in the article. It's based off of a child who was shot in inner city violence. Yes. So the operation is named after, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, LeGend Telefero, a 4-year-old boy shot and killed in Kansas City, Missouri on June 29th. So the name has a meaning, and the meaning is, buried in the article. So God forbid we ever hear about a thoughtful move by President Trump. So yeah. Attorney General Bill Barr said it was classic crime fighting operation. Distinguish it from the use of agents in Portland. So we have seen videos of what's going on in Portland. People being hauled into...
I did see one. I think it was like people yelling at these agents, who are obviously identifiable. They just pull up in unmarked vehicles, as to not call attention to themselves, is why I believe why the vehicles are unmarked in the first place. Also, Trump did announce that he was going to do this. It's not like this is happening without him making it clear that this is happening, correct?
Oh yeah, everything is totally announced. Some of these outlets have reached out to the federal government, to the DHS head, and they're like, "Hey, what's going on? Why are these people being hauled off into these unmarked cars?" And the head is like, "Listen, we have vandals, we have suspects vandalizing and attacking federal agents. They're vandalizing federal property. And of course, we know local law enforcement isn't doing anything, isn't allowed to do anything, is being, attacked by their own leaders, by the public. Of course, a minority of the public, mind you. Yeah.
What a nightmare scenario it is to be a police officer. God.
Yeah, I would never want to live in any of those cities, let alone be a police officer in any of those urban areas. But they're doing that in riots. So riots and protests, if you've ever seen these videos come out where a cop is trying to move through a crowd, they're trying to get across the city in a marked police car, And what happens is
Can't do it.
you have these videos come out where their car is totally surrounded. It's totally surrounded by these BLM protesters,
Mhm.
and they basically have to inch forward. They have to put their foot on the brake and like move at half a mile per hour. And then you have people come up from behind, breaking their window, throwing things inside at the driver's head.
Pelting rocks and bricks at the vehicles.
Literally, yeah.
And there was one video
Huh?
from New York not too long ago where there were protesters stomping on the hoods of moving police cruisers. It was absolutely
Yeah.
insane.
And it's like, look, it's a really bad situation, because the cop's life is in danger. There are what 50 plus people surrounding one police car on all sides. From basically he can only see ahead of him, and so you have tons of people behind you breaking in your windshield, and it's like, what do? Just allow that shard of glass to go right into your skull and then not do anything? Do you tap the gas and risk hurting a couple people to save your life, and then hopefully they get out of the way, so it's just bad situations, and that's why unmarked cars are used. They are used
Yeah.
to prevent the loss of life, to prevent violence, because these cars will get mobbed, then officers can't do their job, and officers have their lives in danger. So
That's true.
yeah. So the Chicago mayor said that she won't let federal troops terrorize the city, which is kind of a weird thing to say. That's not what's happening.
They won't let federal troops terrorize the city, but mobs in the name of BLM, that's okay.
Exactly, yeah. She's fine with rioters terrorizing private citizens' property, but she's very quick to get on federal law. They are not federal troops. This needs to be made clear. They're not troops. They're not paramilitary. They are
Mm-mm.
They're actual law enforcement. They're federal cops. And
Agents.
their
Yeah.
uniform, they have numbers. They have badge numbers on their arms. They have big words on their uniform that says police. So they are very.
Yeah, I'm not sure
responsible.
I'm not sure exactly what they mean by unidentifiable. I mean, if by unidentifiable they mean they're not revealing their face, which would just be stupid because obviously you can't
I mean, they
have
are.
officers. I mean for the most part, but a lot of them are wearing masks. But obviously that's for
Yeah.
anonymity because you don't want to reveal the faces as an officer at
Exactly.
all or a federal agent. But they are definitely they're definitely marked in their uniforms, and it's apparent that they're coming there and detaining people and bringing them off for questioning, and then they're released in the end.
Yeah, for a few
What is?
minutes. They're literally being detained, not even formally to detained or arrested. They're suspects. They're being
No.
questioned. Oh, this isn't the guy we were looking for. You're good. They go back and they probably start destroying a few more buildings. A few more windshields.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
it's not at all shots in the dark either. Like it's not random people being detained. These are people who are like
yeah, no,
obviously they're suspected because they're out wearing probably dark clothing as you see a lot. And
yeah,
they're
with
out
these
marching with
rioters.
mobs. Like you see these people out there.
All right, so let's move on further down the article. Crime has soared in Chicago. 116 murders over 28 days through July 19th, which is the 200% increase we were talking about. And the deployment to New Mexico is less clear, and the mayor has said he does not want federal involvement, while sheriff is to be at the White House. So this isn't exclusive to a few of these cities. It's definitely a problem all over the country because of the rioting. It's clear this is because of the rioting.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the object is not to control. It's not to control people. It's not to send in paramilitary, armed military men walking
It's
down
definitely not the
streets.
Gestapo.
It's not. Yeah. These
Yeah.
are being deployed in conjunction with local police departments to help existing crime fighting agencies. That's what it is. It's help. It's quite literally help. So yeah, noting the unmarked vehicles. And yeah, that's basically the entirety of Trump's new operation. So something to note.
I think it's good.
I think
Overall
this
good.
is definitely the right call. These
Because
mayors are
and
playing
Trump
politics over
was
safety.
and it's good that I think this is a step in the right direction, first of all, because Trump was receiving a lot of criticism earlier in these months for not really taking a lot of action to really stop the rioting that was going on, especially when it was much
Definitely.
stronger and yeah, it was much more prevalent. Obviously, they've died down, but it's still ongoing, and it's still like people aren't talking about it as much.
You've said that you say they've died down. I kind of disagree with that. And it's not that,
Yeah,
it's really not your fault because these riots have been going on for 50 plus days actually. And there are lots of videos on social media and no one is told about them because it's literally not being reported. Like you can go on
right. Well,
most, if not all news outlets, and then you can go on Twitter and you can find these tweets that are not popular at all, but they are on the ground clips of these riots happening since the beginning of June, and they're still happening. So
right.
Trump, in this move, I think this is a good segue into the upcoming election. We know that Trump is in the national aggregate, in most aggregates of swing states, he's really not performing well. Biden is ahead of him. This is in contrast to what it was when the Democrats were having trouble with infighting and the economy was doing amazing. Trump was basically poised to win. There were jokes about him not having to debate a Democrat because he was so far ahead. Um,
Right.
but we have over this past month and a half, with the BLM support rising, and it's now fallen again because of the riots in polls.
Oh yeah.
Trump Trump knows that these suburbs people, they are sympathetic to BLM as a cause, right? It's like the majority basically when they hear Black Lives Matter initially they're like, well, yes, they do. That's a given. And then
Yeah, of
we
course.
have
No one's
rioting,
opposed to that.
we have violence, we have instances of people showing up to the suburbs marching up to private property, private suburbs houses, making death threats. And
Of
now
course.
we're having the suburbs like, okay, I want federal troops. There are polls. I want the federal law enforcement to stop this from happening. Those are polls. And
Absolutely.
I think the Trump campaign knows that. I think the White House knows that. And what Trump has done is, well, okay. Obviously, Trump did not cause this. Trump has overseen this escalation in violence and the whole, let's take it to the suburbs. The rich aren't safe type of thing. And so now he's like, okay, so now these rioters are going to start attacking the voting bloc that I need the most, the suburb independents, the moderates. And so
Yeah.
he's saying, okay, listen, I'm going to send in law enforcement to protect you. Your own mayor is calling me, a tyrant for trying to protect you.
They're
I'm
not
I'm the
even
candidate who's going to
Yeah,
be
but those mayors aren't
saving your
even doing
life.
the jobs that they're supposed to be doing, and then Trump's trying to step in, obviously, and protect the citizens when the mayors aren't stepping up to do that, and he's getting called a tyrant, which is just ridiculous.
Yeah, and he's getting called a tyrant by like a vast minority of people. Again, like I keep saying, the polls show,
People with a
even
big
though
following.
Trump is down, I think Trump is down due to the coronavirus. In these culture war, in these cancel culture polls, in these are you afraid to express your political opinion polls, there is a new Cato Institute poll out, and basically every political group other than liberals are scared to express some political opinions because it might offend people.
Yeah.
Trump Trump is winning the culture war, and but he's losing the election right now. And I think he knows that, and sending in federal law enforcement to protect the suburbs is definitely a good move.
Well,
Um
that's perhaps a good thing that because now that he feels as though he's losing an election, that kind of triggers like the fight or
yeah,
flight mentality.
Exactly.
Especially when you're up against like his opponent Joe Biden. I mean, like what an embarrassment to lose against that guy, right? So he's not going to allow that to happen, and he's going to wake up and realize that his support, his fan base is criticizing him, rightfully so, for not being that responsive recently, and then he's waking up and doing what's necessary with sending federal troops to cities and all that.
Yep. So speaking of Joe Biden, we're gonna go into his major gaffe of, I guess, the day, because there's basically a gaffe every day as with Joe
Biden. Oh, of course.
So we have from the Associated Press, Joe Biden. Did you hear about this yet? About his gaffe today?
Yes. Was it
Joe Biden calls Trump the country's first racist president.
Yeah.
So
I could laugh at that
very
one,
funny,
honestly.
Especially given his prior comments.
Of course.
About how you ain't black if you vote for him.
It's ridiculous.
Joe Biden said
incredibly
Wednesday
divisive.
President Trump was the country's first racist president. So I'm gonna go ahead and ask you, when you think of racism and racist people in American politics in the presidency, like, who do you think of? Just name anyone in history.
Name anyone racist in history?
Yeah.
In terms of racist presidents in history, probably Woodrow Wilson.
You can go back to now, by logical standards, we could say Washington because he owned slaves.
Well, yeah.
Most people exactly what I'm saying is, we know that people lived in their time. People lived in their era. And if I'm not mistaken, Washington was actually very reluctant on slavery. He wasn't a diehard abolitionist, but if I'm not mistaken, he acknowledged
slaves before his death, I believe.
He did, yeah, I know, yes. He did release them. But still, this is all based on the left's logic that they've created. They have created their own traps, as they always do. We have George Washington. We have their godchild, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. You have the Japanese internment camps, people being put into these camps for their race.
Literally because they're Japanese. Yep.
Their favorite president, Roosevelt, was a major racist, major bigot.
Of course.
And I'm honestly not surprised that, Joe Biden says stuff like this. And
me neither.
With Biden, we all know it isn't that he actually doesn't think, Roosevelt was bigoted and racist or wouldn't talk about Washington or people of that time. It's because he's demented. It's because he doesn't know what he's doing. But
it's hard not to laugh at Biden. As sad as it is. He's really not fit for 4 years of being president of this country. No.
We know a serious leftist today, if you tried to bring up Roosevelt, you'd be the Antichrist for that person's day. How dare you criticize FDR, right?
Right.
They would never want to hear the fact that the best Democrat president the best president we've ever had in modern times was a major racist. So very, very funny to hear from Biden. We have from AP, the presumptive Democratic presidential nominee's comments came during a virtual town hall, which, by the way, side note, 19 people were watching live on YouTube. That's where this virtual town hall was streamed.
A grand total of 19 people.
19, yeah. And someone pointed out on Twitter that 19 people were watching it live, and there were almost as many people watching it as were in that Zoom call, participating in the town hall, which I thought was very funny.
That's hilarious.
When a questioner complained of racism surrounding the coronavirus outbreak and mentioned we're going to talk about that in a second, and mentioned the president referring to it as the China virus, it literally did come from China.
Virus. I know.
Biden responded by blasting Trump and his spread of racism. So here is the Biden quote. The way he deals with people based on the color of their skin, their national origin, where they're from is absolutely sickening. No sitting no sitting president has ever done this. Never, never, never. No Republican
Oh,
president has
wow.
done this. No Democratic president. We've had racists and they've existed. They've tried to get elected president. He's the first one that has.
There's a lot to
Man.
unpack there.
I mean, is there? He's just an idiot, right?
Well, yeah, obviously, but there, in terms of dissecting
Man.
every little individual thing, I mean, that he gets wrong about in
Right.
what he
You
says
know,
there.
I think what's going on here is what goes through Biden's head is he has that old man moment of getting so pent up on Trump and how racist he is and how this is unprecedented. And then that devolves into, man, he's the first one to ever do this with the whole Chinese virus thing. He's being racist. He's the first one ever to be this racist. And
And
then
that's
he
not
just
even
doubles down on his on his um on his slow thinking, on his inability to think in the moment, which again is going to be so funny in the
yeah.
debates. It's going to be funny.
Yeah, I do. I really can't wait to watch these debates. I'm literally gonna sit on my couch with a bag of
Yes.
popcorn and just consume these debates on and
I'm going to
on.
watch them several times. Yeah.
Me
It's going to be
too.
great.
I can't wait for the highlights to come out. It's gonna be amazing.
Yeah. So, man, that's just insane that he said that. Biden also
I
suggested
know.
that Trump is using race as a wedge to distract from to distract from his mishandling of the pandemic. So,
Trump is using a race as
Trump
a
is
wedge.
using race. Okay. So, hold on a second.
Interesting.
Who is the one who is the group of people saying Black Lives Matter? It's not Trump going out saying white guilt, white fragility, um,
No,
white cops bad. By the way, apparently black cops bad too. Apparently, if you're a black cop, you're not.
you're not for the
Apparently,
narrative.
if you're a cop, like you're not. If you're white and you're bad. If you're black or like brown, Hispanic or whatever, you're not brown or black. You're blue because you're a cop. So
Interesting.
yeah, it's very interesting
I'm trying to
how that
work that
actually
out in my
happened.
head, but yeah.
Yeah. You're now blue if you are a cop, if you're not white. So Trump is the one coming out basically saying all lives matter. Like it's right now it's all lives matter versus Black Lives Matter, as it usually is when this type of thing happens.
Of course.
I fail to see where Trump is using race. I think for Trump to talk about race, everyone knows, he knows, we know, I think everybody knows, if Trump were to start trying to use race saying it's white people versus black people, you know, I think his approval would dip into the mid 30s. Like I think he would have zero chance
Absolutely.
of being reelected if he
Absolutely.
started to
Oh,
use
and
yeah.
could you think about like the even more relentless attacks that he would undergo from the media for
Yeah, who you think
actually
right now is bad?
I know as if it's not
Yeah.
bad right now. Obviously, if he starts using race, if he were ever to start using race as something divisive or
Yeah,
like
God
in
forbid.
quotations a wedge as they
Uh-huh.
say here, the media would really go at him hard for that. It's just and they would probably convince a lot of people that they're
Definitely.
right. Yeah.
So we have that. The AP goes on, which I think is a good thing they do. They actually say many presidents, including George Washington, owned slaves, and then they go on to say Wilson. They failed to say that he is a Democrat, of course.
Oh,
Wilson, the 20th president, is
what
being
important.
removed from Princeton after protests against institutional racism. Wilson supported segregation and imposed it
Segregation,
on
that's right.
several federal agencies. So yes, Biden, sir, you are incorrect. Trump is not the first racist president.
Well, Trump isn't even racist.
Exactly. It's a false premise. I'm
Yeah, but
speaking I'm
of
speaking
course.
as if that's true. But yeah, Trump is not a racist president, and using Joe
And
Biden's
and if
premise,
it
he's
were
not the
true,
first.
he would still be wrong.
It'd still be wrong.
Of course.
At a
Sleepy
White
Uncle
House
Joe.
briefing later that day, Trump responded to a question about Biden's comments, pointing to his administration's efforts passing criminal justice reform, which is very good, expanding opportunity zones, and of course, low unemployment numbers. I've done more for Black Americans, with the exception of Abraham Lincoln. Very true. See, I feel like someone like Biden, let's say Biden were in Trump's position and he were a Republican, he was doing all this. I feel like he would do this type of thing because Trump just said I've done more for Black Americans than anybody, with the exception of Abraham Lincoln. I feel
Right.
like Biden's the entire campaign trail, which we will go into in a second, involving his gaffes, is just constant doubling down and bringing things to the extreme and forgetting major important American political historical facts. It's just insane. He'd be like,
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not just facts that he forgets. I mean, he forgets what he's talking about in the same
he
sentence.
forgets which state he's in.
Yeah,
um
which is obviously, if not for that reason, I mean that should be reason enough that he's not suitable to be president of the United States. And that's
Definitely,
seriously
yeah.
one of the hardest jobs like I can think of.
Yeah, Biden looks like, so have you seen those pictures of Obama, like before and after being president?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I
he
feel
has
like
really great hair towards
Biden,
the end.
so think of Biden now, and then Biden left office 10 years ago and served 2 terms. And that's where
His
he looks
VP.
like he is. He looks
Yeah.
like he served 2 terms and then he's lived another decade. I think that's how bad he is right now. Um, should have seen George H.W. Bush before he passed. He was definitely worn down. Obama's looking worn down too.
All the presidents really do look like that.
Uh-huh.
It's such a taxing job. Can't
And
imagine.
I'm gonna be honest with you. Trump is like the same person he was when he campaigned. If
He's
not,
still very
yeah,
high energy.
he is.
You really notice the
Insanely high
energy
energy.
behind him. It's crazy. And I really like that about him too. Like
I do like the energy.
yeah. I would enjoy going to a rally, sometime if I could sometime in the near future and just being there in the immersed environment, just feeling all the energy of the people who support him.
Yeah, his rallies are very high energy.
And yeah, and you don't get that with Biden, which is really funny.
No, no, no.
Not at
His
all.
Biden can get 19 people watching online and can barely fill, a closet, right? Like it's just funny. And speaking of that, before we go into the Biden gaffes, which we can really briefly look over because they're very funny. Biden, I'm so I was thinking about this. If I were a candidate for the presidency this
Mhm.
year against Trump, so we know about how the media acts, how social media acts, all of the companies who are vocally anti-Trump, like Jeff Bezos, Amazon, all that,
Yeah, the
and
big
all.
corporations.
So you're part of the modern Democrat Party that's tearing itself apart, right? And you're thinking to yourself, gosh, Trump is so far ahead. Trump is what 80% plus 90% in the Vegas betting odds, and um, our primaries are failing, and we're ripping each other apart at the debates, and we're all being major hypocrites, and all of us are just totally inept and far left, and all that. People are laughing at this party. How could you? In what world could Joe Biden get down on his knees and pray to God for a easier campaign, for the most advantageous, campaign for somebody like him? Ask for a national crisis, a
Mhm.
pandemic that is perfectly, you know, spreads fast, spreads from China, where now we can use race if Trump criticizes China, is deadly for some but is almost harmless for others, has weird symptoms where the media can, overhype people dying, people getting these weird symptoms, is able to produce false positives everywhere, 100% positivity rates places, able to do all this, right? So already we have a national crisis. Whenever a president oversees something bad, even if they don't deserve the blame, they'll get the blame, and obviously Trump is getting the blame in the polls. So you have that. And then obviously with all of this culture war stuff, you have George Floyd. Well, first of all, you have the whole Arbery thing, which was basically just a lead up in terms of the culture war and BLM. Then you have George Floyd caught on perfect video of a white cop and multiple other. I don't think all of the cops were white, but
there was one
in the
Asian
video
officer,
they looked, mostly light skinned. At least they looked
Yeah.
white. Like you have 4 basically white cops standing guard of another white male cop with his knee on this black man's neck on the ground, face
He's
against the
crying,
pavement, saying "I can't breathe." This said video
calling out
published,
to his mother and all that.
yeah, published on every major national news outlet, even conservatives saying this is awful. It's played every day on, ABC nightly news, NBC, MSNBC, everywhere. And then not only that, but you have all this happening. You have basically people supporting BLM, people donating to it, which then that money going through Act Blue going to your campaign. You don't even have to do any of the heavy lifting. And then you have cases spiraling out of control because luckily we have governments that don't want to control people's lives, like tyrants, forcing them to do things they don't want to do. You have that, and you have the ability to basically pin all of this blame on the current president. And not only that, you don't have to campaign. Like,
it's a perfect scenario, really, for Joe Biden.
It is a perfect scenario.
Perfect.
Joe Biden doesn't have to hold rallies. Can you imagine if he did? Can you imagine if Joe Biden had to, the way he is right now, in the comfort of his home, with his wife at home, with probably other people at home behind the camera, holding up little note cards?
No, I cannot imagine Joe Biden leading a rally of people. I mean, everyone at the rally couldn't help but laugh at him. I mean, for some of the things that he does, it's
everyone at the rally. If there's an everyone to talk about, like, what, you're
yeah, the 19 people, right? that
19 people watching on YouTube.
Yeah.
I mean, if Biden gets 19 people on YouTube, how many people would show up? Like, it's a lot easier to click a link than to make your way over to a Biden event.
Drive over and pay money to attend an event.
Yeah, so just some thought about the current election, how, and then of course we have the media bias against Trump. Like, what a perfect scenario.
No, I mean, obviously this pandemic isn't his fault, but I mean, if you get enough people believing that, it's really looking good for it would really make it look good for Joe Biden.
Definitely. And right now things are looking decent for him in the polls. We'll get to that in a second. So yeah, a few Biden gaffes. This is actually from November of last year, and there's still 22. This will be linked. There are 22 listed here, and that's only in last November. So we've had almost a year since this of gaffes, which we can bring up in the next episode. I think would be funny. So I'm not going to go through all of them.
I think it would be really
funny ones.
Going through all that.
We had Joe Biden thinking Trump withdrew from the Paris Peace Accord rather than the Paris Climate Accord. So definitely living in the past there. Biden forgot, he forgot where he went to college. I mean, honestly, how do you forget where you went to, where you paid money to get a higher education? I mean, that's just crazy.
How? Who? Probably someone with early stages of developing dementia.
Yes, perfectly stated. We have him thinking that MLK was assassinated in the late 70s. He was assassinated in 1968. On top of confusing two states, I think it was Vermont and wasn't it New Hampshire or something like that? It was Vermont and then another state. Which is very insulting.
I'm
You know,
not sure.
if you live in a
Yeah.
state and then he's like he's looking around and he's like, "Oh, you're in I mean, obviously this didn't happen, but just as an example, you're in Panhandle, Florida or whatever. Oh, what a great state of South Carolina I'm in right now." Like it's just so weird. Like how do you forget that?
That would have been that would have been way more offensive like some
That would
100
have been
years
way
ago.
more than like, you know, Vermont. Like it's a good thing
Absolutely.
yeah.
I mean, it's just
Now
funny now, but people who
yeah.
take pride in
Now
their
on top
states.
of that, he confused 2 US states. He's even confused 2 countries. He confused Iraq and Syria, which I don't know how you
Oh,
do.
wow.
Iraq is shaped differently, like just different situations going on. I don't know. Him not knowing how to pronounce exponentially. So, yes.
He
We have
he
an
uh, he
instance
also
where
he
Go ahead.
also forgets like the meaning of or like the proportion of number, like what a number signifies. Like he said that he was talking about something in which he said it cost or it could have cost the lives of 150 million
Oh,
Americans.
you're right.
Americans
I think we've lost 150
trying.
million to gun violence or something.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
half the country gone
And then we also
to
had
gun
the whole
violence.
100 million dead from COVID, which was also funny.
Yeah,
And
100 million.
now even more, another Joe Biden gaffe, 720 million women are being put back to work in the US if he were to be able to enact his child tax credit. Isn't that crazy? Joe Biden can put
Absolutely insane.
720 million women back into the workforce in the US, despite
700
the population only being 330 million. So Joe Biden plans on
they're in there
having a
somewhere.
massive baby boom. He plans on enacting a massive baby boom and then doing the child tax credit when he is
And he
president.
calculated
Yeah.
perfectly that there would be
Yes.
720 million women,
Yes.
not men.
He had experts behind the scenes feeding him this information. Yeah.
Oh man, this is
This
really
one's
funny. I
honestly
mean, it feels
funny.
immature, but it's funny just going through all
Yeah.
this.
He said his healthcare plan is, quote, not quality and will increase premiums, which, by the way, is true.
That's what you
He was
want
telling the truth.
when you accidentally tell the truth. Oh man.
Yeah, when you accidentally say how bad your healthcare plan is, that's funny. Um, and everyone remember this. We choose truth over facts. That's a classic
Yeah,
Biden gaffe.
classic.
Now we're getting into more um I don't know how do I want to say this, more like important gaffes that prove certain things, certain concepts, certain people right. We have Joe Biden, poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
Hmm.
So that puts me into the mentality that, okay, how are these people thinking? Are poor kids not
Poor
white?
kids are
Are you saying that, you know, white kids are so good, but poor kids, aka
all white
black
kids are
kids,
talented?
yeah, they're that is that for that sentence to be true, poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids. So so see, it's funny. I'm having a hard time putting this into logic. But the thing is, this is how
Yeah, same
people
here. I
think.
know.
They think white people can't be poor. They think the poor people are black and brown and Hispanic. That's what people. That's how
That's
the
not
left
true
thinks.
at all by any
It's
means.
not true.
I mean,
Just go to West Virginia, you know? Drive through
trailer
a
parks.
large portion of Florida. Drive through most
Oh,
states,
absolutely.
rural areas of most states. You will see plenty of poor white people, trust me. And then this is apparently the number one gaffe since, well, in November. Joe Biden said, quote, "Look at what's happening with Putin." So this was on CNN. "Look at what's happening with Putin. While he is trying to undo our elections, he is undoing elections in Europe. Look at what's happening in Hungary. Look what's happening in Poland. Look what's happening in Moldova. Look what's happening. You think that would have happened under my watch or Barack's watch? You can't answer that. But I promise you, it wouldn't have, and it didn't. Okay. So to be clear, I'm not sure if you caught that. Biden is talking about Russian interference into the US elections.
Yeah. Yeah, I got that part.
We were just lectured since 2016 that Trump won entirely because of Russia, and that Trump was being investigated, and Mueller, it's hashtag it's Mueller time.
Yep.
Flynn indicted. Manafort's guilty. Adam Schiff goes on CNN saying he has seen direct evidence implicating Trump colluding with Russia. And now Biden comes out and says, under Barack's and mine watch, nothing like that could happen. So it's just I don't know what world he's living in.
Moronic.
People this is what happens now that we're in the election time. They find a couple clips over the past 4 years of Trump misspeaking, or like there was that one
locker room talk.
Yeah, or where his like mouth got dry and he said United States weird, and misreading a teleprompter, and it's like, how are you trying to equivocate Joe Biden and Donald Trump?
I don't even know. Yeah, it's funny because Trump could obviously.
We have 22 gaffes, and all of them are not just he said the wrong word, It's entire concepts, big ideas, simple things, where he is, what country he's talking about. He's trying to be the president. Trump
what numbers actually mean.
Trump knows what he's saying. He knows what he's doing. He knows where he is. Biden, it isn't like we found one clip, oh, he has dementia. It's we've been watching this guy for more than a year. And it's clear.
Constant messing up and just patterns, and it's bad. It's embarrassing.
It's it's very bad, very embarrassing. I feel, again, if we weren't in such a perfect time for Joe Biden to be running for president in 2020, I do not think this election would be this, like, of course this election is important. It wouldn't be this big. Trump would be far ahead. The economy was steamrolling. People were happy with the economy, and people were optimistic.
On top of that, Trump being the incumbent president,
exactly
the odds are ever so in his favor.
All right, so I think that is enough Biden talk. But we're not going to keep attacking Biden. It's way too easy. And on that note, I'm actually kidding. We have one more thing to talk about with Joe Biden, but it's not. It's not about Joe Biden. It's more about, well, right now, Elizabeth Warren. So we have another the Associated Press. Elizabeth Warren's new role, key Joe Biden policy advisor. So I've been hearing, Biden is the moderate. Look, if Biden is so demented, how is America going to be destroyed if he's elected? He doesn't know what he's doing, What
kind of logic is that?
I know.
Is a president who doesn't know what he's doing.
What was that? You're cutting out your connection.
Yeah, I was just scrutinizing, if you will, the logic of that statement, as though a president who doesn't know what they're doing is somehow.
I know that could be terrible, and it isn't terrible, per se. It's bad because he isn't going to know what he's doing, or he's not going to be able to effectively.
Other countries will definitely take advantage of that.
I've been saying, and I've been thinking, and I've been reading, and I've been hearing that a vote for Biden is not, it is historically, 2016, you vote for Trump, Trump, you've heard him, you know who he is, you've known him for a couple decades, you know how he talks, you know how he thinks, he's blatant, he's brash, everyone knew who he was, they voted for him. Joe Biden is having his opinions changed, and he's saying what he's told, and he doesn't know what he's saying unless he's told. And now we have Elizabeth Warren publicly coming out as an advisor. If in case people forgot, Warren is not known for being a moderate. She was
No,
the person
not at all.
who many leftist Democrats wanted over Biden, but she's too far left. And the reason
Yep.
she wasn't picked is because even in almost, if not every mainstream polling outlet, even the Washington Post, which is the one, and that always has Trump down 15 or whatever, which is a major outlier, but still, every poll, every electoral map was a literal landslide if Warren was the nominee. Oh, but now conveniently we have this guy who doesn't know what he's doing and doesn't really have, solid opinions on things. He needs his campaign to do things for him.
And
Now all of a
there we
sudden,
have Elizabeth Warren ushered in,
now
and
we have two
who's
things.
pulling the
One of
strings
them
and
is
telling him what to
confirmed.
do.
We have two things. One of them is confirmed and one of them's not. The one that's confirmed is Warren is now, as per the AP, basically a Biden advisor. And it goes through how even if Warren isn't chosen for the vice president pick, because we know Biden is considering women and only women apparently, because apparently the vice president is supposed to be
Because he's
a
also
tool for identity politics rather than merit and looking at who might, help you grab the most voting blocks and help you win and who might implement your agenda the best.
yeah. Well,
Has
things
to be a woman
change.
of color, right? Even if Warren isn't chosen, she could take on the role of Treasury Secretary or lead the Federal Reserve. Can you imagine someone like Warren heading the
Oh
Treasury,
wow.
a top advisor? So now it's all coming together. Biden considering women of color like Kamala Harris, who was also running but was too far left and too unlikable to be the nominee. And then Biden comes in. Luckily, he was there during the Obama administration. People have seen him before. They're like, oh, okay, default, boom.
Oh, he is. Of course.
Biden, I mean, we've had him before.
Name
Right.
recognition, of course. Go with that guy.
And, Trump, COVID, I mean, I guess voting against Trump means COVID goes away, which, by the way, is what's going to happen. If Trump loses COVID, we'll be gone. California will open back up.
Definitely won't be talked about a lot.
Nope. Day after the election, if Biden wins, I'm seeing all these predictions and I'm agreeing with them.
I would
right
not
now.
be surprised at all.
November 4th, November 5th, death cases will start to exponentially decline. Deaths will come to a screeching halt. Mask mandates will be lifted, Anyways.
And it'll all be a product of the Biden administration doing such a swell job calming the virus.
His first 100 days will be eliminating the coronavirus, basically.
Yeah. Something that Trump just through pure incompetence, I say that in quotes, could not achieve.
Right.
But Biden, of course, he can.
Yeah, didn't want to go too much into this article. Just, I mean, I'm not surprised. A lot, if people who think this is, breaking news, big news, I never saw this coming. No, if you look at what's happening with Joe Biden, he's going to need advisors like Warren because he doesn't know what he's doing. And the Democrats are not a party of moderate liberals anymore. It's the party of people like AOC, Kamala, and Warren.
Yeah.
And it's showing, as we can see in this AP article.
So many Democrats feel such a disconnect from their party now because of how far left has become.
Yeah. All right. So one final thing regarding the campaign for today. This was not this is not in this AP article, but it does mention how Warren was able to raise a decent amount, a few million, I think, for Biden in his presidential campaign. What was that?
I believe it was 6 million.
Okay, yeah.
What was that?
You might be right.
Oh, that was a recent fundraiser.
Trump the other night raised 20 million in a virtual fundraiser. I believe it was Pence. So things are really heating up. The war chests on both sides are being filled, and we're getting ready for the debates for the end of summer. And I think the debates and Trump's new COVID press briefings, which last time he did them, he actually performed pretty well against Biden, if I'm not mistaken. Trump is definitely noticing the polls. It took him a while. It took him about a month and a half. Which, to be fair, to make major policy shifts, you should probably not do it immediately. You should probably wait, you know?
Right. And I'm not sure if he's well, I mean, I'm not sure if he's listening to polls so much as he's listening to like, his actual support base and even TV ratings.
I think it's his campaign looking at polls. I think it's his base getting scared from the polls, and he's like, okay, maybe they have a point. Yeah. So hopefully he keeps on doing this, attacking coronavirus. I think it's worth 4 years of potential fiscal reform for a short term, wear the mask for a few months, social distance for the few months, for 4 years of at least at the very least 4 years of a non-far left US federal government. If you thought Obama was bad, the Affordable Care Act, things like that, if you thought that was bad, I think having that again is just disastrous. All right. So, anything more on that, Austin?
Not really. I mean, it's I really think that Trump, if he does pay attention to polls, really, he's gonna, and he wakes up and just takes action, he's gonna really. What's that?
I said yes, very, very evidently he's reacting.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, like I said before, I mean, it's really good that he's reacting, and I think he's ultimately gonna have to fight, fire with fire, which is what he's been doing, and that's good. People need to see him reacting very vigorously almost, so that his fan base needs to see that, he still has the same energy that he had in the 2016 election, that he's not going downhill.
Yes, hopefully we see the same 2016 Trump, but stronger and actually in a position of power. So, the final article, the final event for today is involving a Supreme Court case. So, this was actually decided about a month ago. It was a very big case. Everyone probably knows about it. In case you don't, just some context. From the Washington Examiner, June 15th, the Supreme Court rules workers cannot be fired for being transgender or gay. Now, before I go into this, it should be noted that this argument is not about whether or not this concept is, correct, if this is desired, if this is what we want. It's not that whether the question is, it should not be whether or not we want people to be discriminated against or fired. This is about a court case. It's about how they made the decision. So just a quick disclaimer. The Supreme Court on Monday, back in June, ruled that Title VII of the Civil Rights Act protects gay and transgender people from employment discrimination. 6-3 vote, John Roberts, Neil Gorsuch. Roberts, of course, doing his thing. Gorsuch, kind of surprising. In Bostock v. Clayton County, Title VII's prohibition on discrimination on the basis of sex should be expanded. So originally it was sex. That's what the Civil Rights Bill says. All right?
Right. So males and females.
This quote is from Gorsuch. In Title VII, Congress adopted broad language making it illegal for an employer to rely on an employee's sex when deciding to fire that employee. We do not hesitate to recognize today a necessary consequence of that legislative choice. An employer who fires an individual merely for being gay or transgender defies that law. So,
yeah. So yeah, a mere expansion of that.
Do I agree?
Decision.
I think most people, I think even the dissenting 3 agree with him. Like, they agree that you shouldn't be able to do that, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is we have a Supreme Court that is now bringing up a 1964 worded document, legal document, and adding a provision to it. That's what they're doing. If you go, the point of the court is to interpret laws as they were written. That law was not written to protect gay people. It wasn't. At the time when they were writing it, it was not for transgender people. It was for males and females. It was for people not hiring women because or firing women because they're women.
That's right.
Now, I think it was Ted Cruz talked about this. He said, the question isn't about, the court is morally correct or not. It's legally you're not supposed to legislate from the bench. You're supposed to read a law as it is, not expand the law, not expand the law from a 1960s concept and introduce an entirely new 21st century concept and say, oh, well, this must have been what they meant, 50 plus years ago, right? So that's the case. I will go, let me find the other quotes where he explains it. Which, again, it makes sense. Like, what he's saying makes sense. And this is Gorsuch, by the way. The court tries to convince readers that it is merely enforcing the terms of a statute. This is from Thomas. This is a dissenting. Even as understood today, the concept of discrimination because of sex is different from discrimination because of sexual orientation or gender identity. So I definitely agree with Thomas here. Thomas is a great justice. I think he's correct in that it's very clear that everyone should be able to agree that back in the I'm pretty sure it's the 1964 Civil Rights Act is what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think
there were several,
1964 or 3.
It did. In the article it says 1964. So yeah. They unfortunately did not protect gay people. That law does not protect gay people, and a law should, but it doesn't. So that's why Ted Cruz was saying, if you want to change it, we shouldn't be doing it through courts where now we can have endless cases, endless lawsuits of weird things happening, and the court now having to create this entire new paradigm of suits because they just changed the law. We could have, he was saying, we could have gone through the lawmaking process. We could have added statutes to it. Do you think Republicans,
of course,
and Trump would deny the opportunity to protect gay people in legislation?
No, that's nothing but good public.
In fact, I think Cruz should introduce something. Number one, refuting this Supreme Court case. This could be good for the Republicans. Coming out in a statement saying, look, I think this Supreme Court case is incorrect. I think legislating from the bench is wrong, but I agree with what they're trying to do. And I think we should do it the correct way and make this
decision Congress.
Basically nullifying this decision without actually, trying to work around the law. It's it's creating a law. It isn't contradictory, So we have that. We have fears. This was a month ago. Everyone was hearing it. This is going to lead to so many suits. And lo and behold, Washington Examiner, July 23rd, that is today. Predictable. Supreme Court transgender decision leads to religious liberty legal battle. So that is the precise issue that Ted Cruz was talking about. We could have worked through all of the religious liberty issues with this. So, a transgender man last week filed a lawsuit against a Catholic-run hospital in Maryland, citing in his complaint June's landmark Supreme Court decision on transgender rights, fulfilling conservative fears that the ruling would usher in legal war, which evidently it has. So, the suit was filed on behalf of Hammonds by the ACLU alleges that St. Joseph Medical Center violates the First and 14th Amendment by refusing to perform a surgery necessary to Hammond's transition from woman to man. And they do this because of religion, because they are Catholic.
Yeah.
And what they argue, I'm gonna go ahead and ask you. I'm not sure how familiar you are with this case, but let's say you're in Maryland, okay? I'm not sure if you're aware, Maryland is home to like the greatest hospitals in that area. You have you have Johns Hopkins, okay? If you want surgery in Maryland, of all blue areas, transgender surgery, you're going to find it, okay? And any hospital in there would seize on the opportunity to say, oh, this other hospital didn't want to give you that surgery. Well, I'm going to come out and I'm going to give you that surgery and I'm going to say how bad that other hospital is. And then I'm going to gain publicity. So rather than doing that,
and support.
Yeah. They take it to court and they fight the idea that you cannot do this based on religion. And the hospital says, or the article says, the hospital canceled the surgery after learning that Hammond's uterus was healthy and that the procedure was part of a gender transition. In the complaint, attorneys at the ACLU noted that the hospital left Hammond shocked, angry, afraid, and devastated when it stated it cannot perform because of religious reservations.
Okay, that's fair. This is very similar to like the baking a gay wedding cake.
I know, yes. I was thinking the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Man, I'm sorry, but you have a First Amendment.
First Amendment to religion.
Yes. And
yeah, and if we're like thinking about, baking the gay wedding cake, I mean, the people of that religion, I mean, they reserve the right absolutely to turn away customers for any religious reasons.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like literally in the Constitution. It's like, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah. And it's also worth noting that this hospital has a policy partly based on their religion that if they find out, or that this hospital only performs these surgeries if the organs are like compromised, if they're unhealthy, like
Okay.
Well, okay, listen, you have a perfectly fine uterus, it's healthy. Our religion doesn't. So see, and the reason I'm saying this is it isn't like they're putting that person's life at risk. They're fine.
No.
They have a working body. It's just, listen, don't come here to do it. Go next door. You're in Maryland.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct.
Obviously the ACLU will help you out with that. If anything like this happens. So if anything, you'll make money off of religious liberty. Good for you. Anything more to say about that?
No, I mean, no, that basically summarizes that. I mean, I'm very firm on the opinion that hospital was in the right, and it's totally okay for them to say no, and the person seeking that elective surgery should just move on to the next hospital. I mean, that hospital loses out on money, but it's out of respect for their own religion.
Right. Keyword elective, right? You don't. It's not like you're gonna die. All right.
No, that person's life was in no way in any danger.
Now, emotionally, they were shocked, right? They were shocked. They were
sure. As always.
Put down by this religious hospital, saying, "Look, go get it somewhere else."
Yeah. How dare they follow their doctrine?
Lo and behold, Mr. Roberts and Mr. Gorsuch flipping on this issue. And to be honest, Gorsuch, this is entirely speculation. I think Gorsuch is regretting it because Gorsuch is principled, and he's probably saying this, and he's like, "Man, I should not have done that. I should have made this a 5-4 at least." Now, Roberts, I'm not surprised. We know how Roberts flip-flops every other every other month.
Yeah.
All right, so that's that. That's all of the news we had today. Biden election, Trump, and this new Supreme Court case. So thank you everybody for listening to this episode of the Investigate Further podcast. I am your host, Eric Daugherty. Austin, thank you for co-hosting with me today.
Of course, it was a pleasure.
And we will see you all in the next episode.